All right, let's go to the front of the Oz. States drive new resolve on climate. That's the headline. Two Liberal premiers are expanding their state's climate change programs, with South Australia's Stephen Marshall vowing to accelerate moves towards a zero-emissions economy, and New South Wales signing a $2 billion climate and energy deal with Scott Morrison. In an interview with the Oz, Mr Marshall said he would put his foot to the floor on renewable energy and call for an end to the left-right split in the climate debate, which was wrongly presented as the right being pro-coal and the left being pro-renewables. Well, I mean, this is a really interesting issue, Alexis, and it's one that, you know, if we knew the answer to this, the whole climate change issue, you know, everyone would get a Pulitzer Prize or a Nobel Peace Prize. But, you know, I guess the states being at the table, we've got two Liberal premiers who are saying this. I guess in many respects, Morrison is really taking the issue seriously.
Yeah, it certainly seems that way. And after reading through this story, what can I say? I just take my hat off to Marshall, really. I mean, his comments are quite unprecedented, and I agree with him completely that we need to stop framing this issue as a left-right you know, divide, because if we are ever going to get serious and we ever are going to do anything meaningful, we do need to unite and stop playing these political games. So I've got nothing but applause for him for taking that stance and for making this really strong statement.
Matty Cunningham, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think that the statement's fine, Gleeson, but I worry about the practicality, okay? Because, like, you're right. Let's take the Pulitzer Prize approach. Everyone in this country would say, yes, I want to have 100% renewable energy, right? It'd be great. I'd love to have 100% renewable energy tomorrow. I'd love to have, you know, 70% renewable energy. I'd love to have, you know, but the problem is you need dispatchable power. You need baseload power. We saw in South Australia a few years ago that if you're too reliant on renewable energy, you know, the lights can go out. We saw in Alice Springs last October a cloud passed over the solar station in Alice Springs that sparked a chain of events that saw the power go out for 9 hours. So it's not as simple as just saying, oh, let's have more renewable energy. I'd love to see a politician stand up and say, right, this is my plan to have more renewable energy, but also bring stability to the grid and also make sure that people's power prices don't go through the roof. The reason you'd never hear a politician say that is because at the moment it's just not possible.
Well, Matt, and to take that further, the real issue here is reliable power, reliable electricity is really important. But when you look at the Greens policy, which has been cuddled by the Labor Party of 50% renewables by 2030, that's great if it was going to cost us, you know, $50 billion. But it's going to cost us $1.2 trillion. And the impact on the country, this country of 22 million, you know, with a GDP less than California, it's going to bugger us. I mean, you know, the economy is going to be buggered. And yet they go ahead and they have this ideology, but they don't come up with the plan. When Shorten was asked about this during the election campaign, he kept saying, oh, you know, the real cost is of doing nothing. And people didn't see it. You know, they saw through that. And that's why he wasn't elected. And yet here we have these climate debates all the time, these climate lefties saying that, you know, we should be looking at these renewables. Look at South Australia. Look at Victoria. You may as well turn the lights off down there. Queensland does all the heavy lifting when it comes to providing electricity on the grid because we've got coal-fired power stations up here. Sorry for getting, you know, a bit fired up, but it's true. Matty?
Well, they had them in Victoria as well, but they're closing them down. Now, the alternative to coal, Gleeson, is gas. There's plenty of it in the ground here in the Northern Territory. There's plenty of it in the ground in New South Wales, and they're talking about that. We might get to that later, the fact that they're talking about developing that. There's plenty of it in the ground in Victoria, but Victoria has not only a moratorium on fracking that gas, but wants to enshrine that in the Constitution so that it can never be taken out of the ground. I mean, the issue here is, you know, if you want to reduce emissions, well, gas is a far cleaner fuel than coal. So you go a long way to reducing emissions if you're replacing energy that comes from coal-fired power plants, certainly in the medium term. With gas. But, you know, it's just, you know, Stephen Marshall there says he doesn't want it to turn into a left-right debate, and I think that's probably a good point. The problem is, Gleeson, that, you know, whenever anyone like you or I points out some of these things. I've done it several times in my column in the NT News. You just, you get labelled as sort of some far-right lunatic who doesn't love renewable energy. I love renewable energy. I love it as much as anyone. I wish we could have it. But there are practical realities in place here as well that need to be considered. And a lot of people just don't want to talk about those things.
Absolutely.